When your wife dies and your children stop calling, you learn something about silence. It isn't peaceful. It's a predator. Rowan Caldwell spent 7 years bleeding into 412 acres of unforgiving Montana dirt, telling himself the land owed him nothing but taking his sweat anyway. The day Eliza Hart's letter arrived, he'd already written his own ending: sell what the bank hadn't claimed, disappear into whatever came after giving up. But strangers don't write letters promising nothing except honesty. And desperate men don't refuse lifelines, even when they come wrapped in a widow's blunt words and a child's laughter he'd forgotten existed. If you want to see whether a man can be saved by someone who refuses to save him, stick around. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. The fence post snapped clean through on a Tuesday morning, and Rowan Caldwell didn't even flinch. He stood there in the snow, February snow, the kind that doesn't melt, just accumulates like bad debt, and stared at the splintered wood lying across the frozen mud. His gloves were torn at the thumbs. His breath came out in short, visible bursts. Somewhere behind him a cow lowed, stupid and insistent, but he didn't turn around. 7 years ago, he would have cursed, would have kicked the damn post, grabbed the hammer from the truck bed, driven into town for new lumber even though the hardware store charged twice what it should. 7 years ago, he would have cared. Now he just picked up the post, wedged it back into the half-frozen ground, and walked away. The ranch spread out around him in every direction, 412 acres of Montana scrubland that looked better in summer but never looked good. The house sat at the center of it all, a 2-story structure built in 1943 by a man who believed in permanence. Rowan had believed in it too, once. Now the paint peeled in long gray strips, the porch sagged on the north end, and the roof leaked in 3 places he'd stopped patching because what was the point? He climbed the porch steps, each one groaning under his weight, and pushed through the front door. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and dust and something else he couldn't name. Silence, maybe. If silence had a smell, it would be this: stale air, closed windows, rooms nobody entered anymore. The kitchen table held a single plate, a single mug, a single fork. He'd washed them after breakfast, set them on the drying rack, put them back in the cabinet. Tonight he'd use them again. Tomorrow, the same. The routine didn't comfort him, but it structured the emptiness, gave it edges. He poured himself coffee from the pot he'd made at 5 that morning. It was burnt now, bitter, but he drank it anyway. Waste was a sin, even if nothing else mattered. The mail sat on the counter where he'd dropped it: 2 bills, a flyer for a seed company he'd never order from, and a letter. He'd noticed the letter immediately. You don't get personal mail when you're a 47-year-old man living alone on a failing ranch. You get invoices, past due notices, the occasional postcard from a real estate agent suggesting you explore your options. But this was different. A cream-colored envelope, his name written in careful blue ink across the front. No return address. Rowan picked it up, turned it over. The seal was unbroken. He set it back down. Then he picked it up again. The letter opener was in the drawer, silver, tarnished, a gift from his wife the first Christmas they'd spent in this house. He hadn't used it in years. He used it now, sliding the blade under the flap, careful not to tear the paper. Inside was a single sheet, folded once. The handwriting matched the envelope, neat, deliberate, the kind of penmanship they didn't teach anymore. Mr. Caldwell, my name is Eliza Hart. I'm writing to you because I was given your name by a mutual acquaintance who thought we might have compatible situations. I'm a widow with a 7-year-old daughter. I live in Nebraska, and I've been managing on my own for 3 years since my husband passed. I won't lie, it's been difficult. I'm writing to men in Montana because I've heard there's land out there and men who need help running it. I'm not looking for romance. I'm looking for stability, partnership, and a place my daughter can grow up with space and safety. If you're willing to correspond, I'd like to know more about your situation. If not, I understand. Regards, Eliza Hart. Rowan read it twice. Then he folded it back up, slid it into the envelope, and set it on the counter. He stood there for a long time, staring at it. Busk. The last time he'd gotten a letter from a woman, it was from his daughter, Claire. That was 2 years ago. She'd written to tell him she was getting married, that the wedding would be in Seattle, that she hoped he could make it, but understood if he couldn't. She didn't ask him to walk her down the aisle, didn't ask him to give a speech, just said she hoped he could make it. He didn't go. He told himself it was the ranch, told himself he couldn't leave the cattle, couldn't afford the plane ticket, couldn't take the time. But that wasn't it. The truth was simpler and worse. He didn't think she wanted him there, didn't think he'd fit into her new life, the one she'd built after leaving Montana, after deciding the ranch wasn't worth staying for. His son, Michael, had left even earlier. Joined the Army at 18, got stationed in Georgia, married a woman from Tennessee. Rowan had met her once, at Michael's graduation from basic training. She seemed nice. She called him Sir. Michael called once a month for the first year, then every other month, then every few months. Now it was Christmas and his birthday, and even those calls felt obligatory. Rowan didn't blame them. He'd stopped blaming them the same time he'd stopped fixing the roof. It just was. They had lives, and he had the ranch, and those two things didn't overlap anymore. His wife, Sarah, she'd been the glue. She was the one who called the kids, who sent care packages, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries and made sure everyone felt connected. When she got sick, the connections frayed. When she died, they snapped. 7 years. Sometimes it felt longer. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. The next morning, Rowan sat at the kitchen table with the letter in front of him and a blank sheet of paper beside it. He'd found a pen that still worked, barely, and he'd been staring at the paper for 20 minutes. What the hell was he supposed to say? Dear Mrs. Hart, thank you for your letter. I'm a washed-up rancher with a mountain of debt and a house that's falling apart. My kids don't talk to me. I haven't had a conversation longer than 5 minutes in 2 years, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose this place by next winter. Still interested? He set the pen down, picked it up again, started writing. Mrs. Hart, I got your letter. I'll be honest, I don't know what to say. I've got 412 acres in the Cimarron Valley, mostly cattle, some hay. The ranch has been in my family for 3 generations, but it's not what it used to be. I've been running it alone since my wife died, and I'm barely keeping it together. If you're looking for stability, I'm not sure I can promise that. But if you want to know more, I'm willing to write back. Rowan Caldwell. He folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and drove into town before he could change his mind. Basic. Caldwell, Montana wasn't much of a town. Population 1,200, one main street, a grocery store, a hardware store, a diner, and a post office that doubled as a DMV. Rowan parked his truck in front of the post office and walked inside, the bell above the door jangling as he entered. Linda Morris stood behind the counter, sorting mail. She looked up when he walked in, her expression shifting from neutral to surprised. Rowan Caldwell, she said. Twice in 1 week. Should I be concerned? Just mailing a letter. Must be important. He handed her the envelope. She glanced at the address, Nebraska, and raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Linda had worked at the post office for 30 years. She'd seen everything, and she knew when not to ask questions. Anything else? That's it. She nodded, stamped the envelope, and tossed it into the outgoing bin. Take care of yourself, Rowan. You too. He left before she could say anything else. Uchia. Eliza's reply came 2 weeks later. Rowan found it in the mailbox on a Saturday afternoon, and this time he didn't hesitate. He tore it open right there at the end of the driveway, standing in the cold with his coat unbuttoned and his breath fogging the air. Mr. Caldwell, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that you didn't try to sell me on something that isn't there. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for a man who tells the truth, even when it's hard. Let me tell you about my situation. My husband died in a farming accident 3 years ago. He left me with some debt, a small house I'm renting out, and a daughter who deserves better than what I can give her alone. I work 2 jobs, one at a grocery store, one cleaning houses, and it's still not enough. Lila is smart and strong, but she needs space to grow. She needs a future that isn't me working myself into the ground just to keep us fed. I'm not afraid of work. I grew up on a farm, and I know what it takes to keep land running. If you're willing to let us come out there, I'll pull my weight. Lila will too. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for partnership. If you're serious about this, write back. Eliza Rowan read it 3 times. Then he went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and started writing. The letters came faster after that. Once a week, then twice a week, then every few days. They didn't talk about feelings or dreams or any of the things Rowan associated with courtship. They talked about logistics, about work, about what it would take to make this arrangement function. Eliza asked questions. How many head of cattle did he run? What kind of infrastructure did the ranch have? Was there a school nearby? What were the winters like? Rowan answered, 60 head down from 100 3 years ago. A barn that needed repairs, a chicken coop that didn't, a hay shed with a leaking roof. The school was in town 15 miles away. The winters were brutal. She didn't flinch, didn't sugarcoat. When he told her the ranch was struggling, she asked how bad. When he said the bank was circling, she asked how long he had. When he admitted he'd been thinking about selling, she wrote back, "Don't. You've got land, infrastructure, and knowledge. Those are assets. The debt is a problem, but it's not insurmountable. We can fix this." Her confidence unnerved him. He'd spent 7 years watching the ranch crumble, convincing himself it was inevitable. She treated it like a puzzle, hard, but solvable. In one letter, she wrote, "You're stuck because you're alone. I'm stuck because I'm alone. Together we won't be stuck anymore." Rowan didn't know if he believed her, but he wanted to. By April, they'd been writing for 3 months. The snow had melted, leaving the land muddy and raw. Rowan spent his days fixing what he could and ignoring what he couldn't. At night, he sat at the kitchen table and read Eliza's letters, her words filling the silence that had swallowed his life. She told him about Lila, how the girl loved books, how she asked 1,000 questions a day, how she'd cried when they'd had to give away their dog because the landlord didn't allow pets. She told him about her own childhood, growing up on a wheat farm in Kansas, learning to drive a tractor before she learned to drive a car. She told him she wasn't afraid of Montana winters because she'd survived worse. Rowan told her about Sarah, about how they'd met at a county fair, about the way she used to sing while she cooked, about the way she'd made the house feel less empty. He told her about Claire and Michael, about the way they'd left and never looked back. He told her he didn't blame them, but wished things were different. He didn't tell her he was scared, didn't tell her he woke up most mornings wondering what the point was. Didn't tell her that some nights he sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap, not because he intended to use it, but because it was there. But maybe she knew anyway. Because in her next letter she wrote, "I think you're afraid this won't work. I think you're afraid I'll show up and realize you're not worth the trouble. But here's what I know. I've been on my own for 3 years, and I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending I can do this alone. I'm tired of watching Lila grow up in a place that's too small for her. I'm tired of being afraid. So, yes, I'm scared too, but I'm coming anyway. We'll be there in 6 weeks." Rowan set the letter down. His hands were shaking. 6 weeks. He spent those 6 weeks in a frenzy of preparation. He fixed the fence posts that had been broken for months. He patched the roof as best he could. He cleaned out the spare bedroom, the one that used to be Claire's, and scrubbed the floors and washed the windows. He bought sheets, a lamp, a rug. He painted the walls. He didn't know what he was doing, didn't know if it mattered, but he did it anyway. The night before they were supposed to arrive, he stood in the driveway and looked at the house. It still looked worn, still looked tired, but it looked less abandoned. It looked like someone might live there. He went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. What? They arrived on a Thursday afternoon in late May. Rowan heard the car before he saw it, a rattling sedan kicking up dust as it came down the long driveway. He stepped onto the porch and watched it approach, his heart hammering in his chest. The car stopped 20 feet from the house. The engine cut off. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, maybe 5'8", with dark hair pulled back in a braid. She wore jeans, a flannel shirt, and boots caked with dust. Her face was tanned, her expression unreadable. She looked at the house, then at him. "Rowan Caldwell?" "That's me." "Eliza Hart." She didn't smile, didn't extend her hand, just stood there, studying him. The passenger door opened and a little girl climbed out. She had her mother's dark hair but lighter eyes, green, maybe, or hazel. She wore a pink jacket and sneakers, and she clutched a stuffed rabbit in one hand. "This is Lila," Eliza said. The girl looked up at him, her expression solemn. "Hi." "Hi," Rowan said. Eliza walked around the car and opened the trunk. It was packed full, suitcases, boxes, bags. She pulled out the first suitcase, hefted it easily, and set it on the ground. "Where do you want these?" Rowan blinked. I'll get them. I can carry my own things. I didn't say you couldn't." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough." They carried the luggage inside in silence. Lila followed, clutching her rabbit, her eyes wide as she looked around the house. Rowan led them upstairs, showed them the spare bedroom. Eliza set her suitcase down, looked around, nodded. "It's fine. I painted it," Rowan said, then immediately felt stupid for saying it. "I can tell." She turned to face him. "We need to talk." "All right." "Not now. After Lila goes to bed. But soon." "All right," he said again. She didn't smile, but something in her expression softened, just slightly. "Thank you for letting us come," she said. "Yeah, of course. Won't." That night, after Lila had fallen asleep in the freshly painted room, Rowan and Eliza sat at the kitchen table. He'd made coffee, better coffee than usual, and she drank it without comment. "So," she said, "let's talk logistics." "Logistics? You've got 60 head of cattle, a barn that needs work, and a bank breathing down your neck. What's the timeline?" Rowan blinked. "You don't waste time, do you?" "I wasted 3 years in Nebraska. I'm done wasting time." He told her everything. The debt, $30,000, most of it accumulated in the last 2 years. The declining herd he'd sold 40 head just to keep the lights on. The failing infrastructure, fences, barn, equipment. The land itself was good, but he didn't have the capital or the manpower to use it properly. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she set her mug down. "All right," she said, "here's what we're going to do." Eliza's plan was simple, not easy, simple. She laid it out in 20 minutes. No wasted words, no false optimism. First, stop the bleeding. That meant cutting unnecessary expenses, renegotiating with suppliers, selling off equipment they didn't need. She'd already noticed a tractor in the barn that looked like it hadn't run in years. Sell it. Use the money to fix the fences. Second, stabilize the herd. 60 head wasn't enough to be profitable, but it was enough to survive. They needed to stop selling and start rebuilding. That meant better grazing rotation, better feed management, better record keeping. Third, diversify income. Cattle alone wouldn't save them. They needed other revenue streams, hay sales, maybe chickens, maybe leasing some of the land. She'd look into grants, subsidies, anything that could bring in cash without requiring major investment. Fourth, work. Every day. Both of them. No days off, no excuses. If they were going to save this place, it would be through sheer, relentless effort. Rowan listened, his coffee going cold in front of him. "You really think this will work?" he asked. "I think it has to." "That's not an answer." She met his eyes. "No, it's not." They sat in silence for a moment. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "I already told you. Lila needs—" "No. Why are you really doing this?" She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Because I'm tired of being afraid. And because I think you are too." Rowan didn't answer, couldn't. She stood, picked up her mug, and set it in the sink. "Get some sleep. We start tomorrow." The first week was chaos. Eliza moved through the ranch like a storm, cataloging everything, asking questions, making lists. She didn't ask permission, just did what needed doing. She reorganized the barn, fixed the chicken coop, negotiated a better price on feed. Rowan found himself following her around, half impressed, half bewildered. Lila adapted faster than he expected. She explored the ranch with her rabbit tucked under one arm, asking 1,000 questions. What were the cows' names? Why did the barn smell like that? Could she help feed the chickens? Rowan didn't know how to talk to kids anymore, but Lila didn't seem to mind. She just chattered at him while he worked, her voice filling the silence he'd grown used to. One afternoon, she asked, "Are you my dad now?" Rowan froze, a bag of feed in his hands. Mom said you and her might get married. Does that mean you're my dad?" He set the feed down, looked at her. She gazed back at him, her green eyes serious. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Would that be okay with you?" She thought about it. "I guess. You seem nice, and you have cows." "I do have cows." "That's good. I like cows." "Me too." She smiled, a quick, bright thing, and ran off toward the house. Rowan stood there for a long time, staring after her. Asal. 2 weeks in, Eliza cornered him in the barn. "We need to talk about the marriage," she said. Rowan looked up from the fence post he was sanding. What about it? We need to do it soon. Legal protection. If something happens to you, I need to be able to keep this place running. If something happens to me, you need to be Lila's legal guardian. That's very romantic. I'm not interested in romance. I'm interested in survival. He set down the sandpaper. You really don't pull your punches, do you? No? She crossed her arms. Do you have a problem with that? No, He rubbed the back of his neck. I haven't thought about marriage since Sarah died. I'm not Sarah. I know. Good. So we'll go into town next week and get it done. No ceremony, just paperwork. Just paperwork. Unless you want a ceremony. Do you? She considered. No. Then paperwork it is. She nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. Rowan? Yeah? Thank you for saying yes, for letting us come here. You're doing most of the work. That's not what I mean. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. She left. He went back to sanding the fence post. They got married on a Wednesday in June. Linda Morris from the post office served as their witness. The ceremony took 10 minutes. Rowan wore a clean shirt. Eliza wore the same jeans and flannel she'd been wearing all week. Lila stood between them, holding her rabbit. When it was over, they drove back to the ranch. That night, Eliza made dinner, pot roast, potatoes, carrots. It was the first real meal Rowan had eaten in months. They ate in silence, Lila swinging her legs under the table. This is good, Rowan said. Thank you. I mean it. Eliza looked at him, something unreadable in her expression. I know. By the end of the first month, the ranch had started to shift. Small changes, mostly. The barn doors didn't stick anymore. The fences held. The cows had better grazing. The books were organized. The bills were paid. The kitchen didn't smell like dust. Rowan still woke up most mornings expecting it all to fall apart. Still caught himself waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it didn't. Eliza worked like a machine, efficient, relentless, uncompromising. She didn't complain, didn't slow down, didn't ask for help she didn't need. And Lila filled the house with noise. She sang off key while she brushed her teeth. She asked questions at breakfast. She left her shoes by the door and her books on the couch. The house, which had been silent for 7 years, was suddenly full of life. One night, Rowan found himself standing in the doorway of the living room, watching Eliza read to Lila on the couch. The girl was curled against her mother's side, her eyes drooping, her rabbit clutched in one hand. Eliza's voice was soft, steady, the words of the story washing over them both. She looked up, caught him watching, raised an eyebrow. You okay? She asked. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. And for the first time in years, he almost meant it. But the ranch didn't forgive easily. In mid-July, the hay shed collapsed, just gave up, the old beams finally rotting through, the roof caving in on itself. Rowan stood there staring at the wreckage, his stomach sinking. Eliza walked up beside him, hands on her hips. How much hay did we lose? Most of it. Can we buy more? Not without going deeper into debt. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, We'll figure it out. How? I don't know yet, but we will. She walked away, already making a new list in her head. Rowan stayed where he was, staring at the collapsed shed. The ranch was testing them. It always did. The question was whether they'd pass. They didn't talk about feelings, didn't sit around discussing hopes or dreams. They worked. Every day, from sunup to sundown, they worked. Eliza fixed what she could, sold what she couldn't, and made lists of everything in between. Rowan followed her lead, his hands remembering skills he'd let atrophy, his body remembering what it felt like to have a purpose. And at night, after Lila went to bed, they sat at the kitchen table and talked logistics. Always logistics, never anything else. Until the night Eliza set down her pen and said, I'm tired. Rowan looked up. What? I'm tired. I've been working 18-hour days for 5 weeks and I'm tired. Okay, so take a break. I can't. Why not? Because if I stop, I'll remember why I'm here, and I don't want to remember. Rowan set down his own pen. What does that mean? She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, My husband died in a farming accident, but it wasn't an accident. He was drunk. He'd been drinking for months, and I didn't stop him, didn't know how. And then one day he climbed on the tractor and didn't come back. Rowan didn't know what to say. I'm here because I couldn't save him, she continued. And I'm here because I'm trying to save myself. And Lila, and maybe even you, but I don't know if I can. So I work. Because if I'm working, I don't have to think about it. She looked at him, her eyes dry but her expression raw. I'm not okay, Rowan. I'm functional. But I'm not okay. He reached across the table, put his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Me neither, he said. They sat like that for a while, not talking, just sitting. The summer pushed on. The days were long, the work was brutal, and the ranch fought them every step of the way. But they didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because stopping meant losing, and neither of them knew how to do that anymore. Lila started school in the fall. Rowan drove her into town every morning, the two of them sitting in companionable silence while the radio played static-filled country songs. She told him about her classmates, about her teacher, about the boy who'd pulled her braid. Rowan listened, surprised by how much he cared. Eliza kept working, kept pushing, kept refusing to let the ranch beat them. And Rowan started to believe. Not in miracles, not in easy fixes, but in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could hold on long enough to see what came next. One evening in late September, Rowan walked the fence line. The sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of gold and amber. The cattle grazed quietly in the distance. The house stood solid behind him, smoke curling from the chimney. He heard footsteps and turned to see Eliza walking toward him, her hands shoved in her pockets. You okay? She asked. Yeah, just looking. She stood beside him, following his gaze. It's a good piece of land. Yeah. We're going to make it work. You sound sure. I have to be. He looked at her. She looked back. Thank you, he said. For what? For coming here. For not giving up. She smiled, just a little. You too. They stood there together, watching the sun go down, and for the first time in 7 years, Rowan didn't feel alone. The ranch was still hard, the debt was still there. The winters were still coming, but he wasn't facing them alone anymore, and that made all the difference. The first snow came in early October, which wasn't unusual, but wasn't welcome either. Rowan woke to find the valley white and the temperature hovering just below freezing. He dressed in the dark, careful not to wake Eliza in the room down the hall, and headed downstairs. She was already in the kitchen, coffee brewing, her hair still damp from the shower. Morning, she said without looking up from the notebook where she was writing. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Been thinking about the north pasture. Rowan poured himself coffee, leaned against the counter. What about it? The fence is weak in 3 places. If we get a heavy snow and the cattle push against it, it'll go down. We need to reinforce it before the ground freezes completely. That's at least 2 days of work. Then we start today. He didn't argue. There was no point. When Eliza decided something needed doing, it got done. They worked through breakfast, Lila eating cereal at the table while they discussed materials and timing. The girl had learned not to interrupt when her mother was in planning mode. She just ate and hummed to herself, swinging her legs. Can I help? Lila asked when Eliza finally paused. Not with the fence, honey. Too cold. I could bring you hot chocolate. Eliza softened slightly. That would be nice, but you have school. After school, then. After school. Rowan watched the exchange, still getting used to this version of domesticity. It wasn't like it had been with Sarah. Sarah had made everything feel easy, natural. With Eliza, everything was deliberate, planned. But it worked. Somehow, it worked. They drove Lila to school, then headed back to the ranch. The north pasture sat at the far edge of the property, accessible only by a rutted dirt road that turned to mud when it rained and ice when it snowed. Today it was somewhere in between, frozen on top, soft underneath. The truck slid twice before they reached the gate. This is going to be a long winter, Rowan muttered. Every winter is long here. That's not news. You don't have to sound so cheerful about it. I'm not cheerful, I'm realistic. They unloaded the supplies, new posts, wire, tools, and got to work. The ground was harder than Rowan expected, the first inch already frozen. He swung the post hole digger with more force than necessary, his breath coming out in white clouds. Eliza worked beside him, quieter, but just as determined. She didn't complain about the cold, didn't slow down, didn't ask for breaks. She just worked. Rowan had learned that about her in the past 4 months. She didn't know how to quit, didn't know how to do anything halfway. By noon, they'd replaced 2 posts and were starting on the 3rd. Rowan's hands ached even through his gloves. His back felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, but the fence was holding. That was what mattered. "Tell me about your husband," he said suddenly. Eliza looked up, startled. "What? You told me how he died, but you never told me about him. Who he was." She went back to working, her movements steady. For a moment, Rowan thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she said, "His name was Daniel. We met in high school, got married when I was 20. He was funny, made me laugh even when I didn't want to. Loved Lila more than anything." "But he drank." "Yeah, he drank." She hammered a staple into the post, the sound sharp in the cold air. "Started after his dad died. Just beer at first, then whiskey. I tried to get him to stop, threatened to leave, but I never did. And then one day he went out to the field and didn't come back." "You blame yourself." "Every day." Rowan didn't say anything. What was there to say? He knew about blame. Knew about carrying weight that didn't belong to you, but that you picked up anyway. "Sarah got sick fast," he said after a while. "One day she was fine, the next she was in the hospital, pancreatic cancer. They gave her 6 months. She made it 4. "I'm sorry." "Me too." He set down the post hole digger, flexed his fingers. "The kids? They were already grown. Claire was in college, Michael was in the army. They came home when she got bad, but they left again after the funeral. I told them to go. Told them they had their own lives, but I didn't mean it. I wanted them to stay." "Did you tell them that?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I'm an idiot." Eliza almost smiled. Almost. "Yeah, you are." They went back to work. By the time they finished, the sun was low and the temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. Rowan's hands were numb, his face stinging from the wind. But the fence was solid. It would hold. They drove back to the house in silence, the truck's heater blasting air that didn't quite get warm. When they pulled into the driveway, Lila was sitting on the porch steps, bundled in her pink jacket, a thermos clutched in both hands. "I made hot chocolate," she announced. Eliza climbed out of the truck, walked over, and kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Thank you, baby." "Is the fence fixed?" "It's fixed." "Good. I was worried the cows would get out and we'd have to chase them." "We're not chasing cows in the snow," Rowan said, "but if they got out, we'd have to." "They're not getting out." Lila seemed satisfied with this. She poured hot chocolate into 3 tin cups and handed them around. It was lukewarm and slightly watery, but Rowan drank it anyway. Lila beamed. Inside, Eliza started dinner while Rowan sat at the table, too tired to move. Lila climbed into the chair next to him and pulled out a book. "Will you read to me?" she asked. "Your mom's better at that." "She's cooking. Please?" Rowan took the book. It was some story about a girl and a horse and a farm. He read slowly, stumbling over words he didn't use in everyday life. But Lila didn't seem to mind. She leaned against his arm, her eyes following the pictures. When Eliza called them to dinner, Lila looked up at him. "You're a good reader." "I'm really not." "You are. You do all the voices." "I wasn't doing voices." "Yes, you were. You made the horse sound grumpy." Rowan looked at Eliza, who was trying not to laugh. "I made the horse sound grumpy?" "Apparently." They ate dinner, chicken, rice, green beans from a can, and talked about nothing important. Lila chattered about school, about her friend Emma, who had a dog, about the spelling test she'd aced. Eliza listened, asked questions, reminded Lila to eat her vegetables. Rowan just sat there, still not quite used to this, still waiting for it to feel normal. After dinner, Eliza took Lila upstairs for a bath. Rowan washed the dishes, dried them, put them away. He could hear voices above him, Lila's high and bright, Eliza's lower and patient. The house creaked in the wind. Outside, snow was falling again, light and steady. When Eliza came back downstairs, she poured herself a glass of whiskey and sat down at the table. Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know you drank." "I don't. Usually." She took a sip, grimaced. "But today was hard." Yeah, we did good work, though. We did. She looked at him over the rim of her glass. You ever think about calling them? Your kids? Rowan stiffened. What brought that up? You, reading to Lila, you looked, I don't know, sad. I wasn't sad. Rowan. He sighed, leaned back in his chair. I think about it, but I don't know what I'd say. How about hi? That's usually a good start. It's been 2 years since I talked to Claire. Longer since I talked to Michael. What am I supposed to say? Hey, I know I've been a terrible father, but I remarried and there's a kid here now. Thought you should know? You weren't a terrible father. Wasn't a great one either. Eliza set down her glass. My father didn't speak to me for 5 years after I married Daniel. Said I was too young. Said Daniel wasn't good enough. And he was right. But I was stubborn, and he was stubborn, and by the time we both got over ourselves, 5 years had gone by. You know what I learned? What? Time doesn't fix things. You fix things, and you can't do that if you don't try. Rowan didn't answer. He knew she was right. Knew he should pick up the phone, write a letter, do something. But the idea of reaching out only to be rejected again, or worse, pitied, made his chest tighten. I'll think about it, he said finally. Okay. She finished her whiskey, rinsed the glass, and headed upstairs. Rowan sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. The next morning, he found Eliza in the barn, mucking out stalls. She didn't look up when he walked in. We need to talk about money, she said. Good morning to you, too. I'm serious, we're running out. Rowan leaned against the doorframe. How bad? Bad. We've got enough to cover bills through November, maybe December, if we're careful. But after that, we're in trouble. I could sell more cattle. No, we need to rebuild the herd, not shrink it. Selling now is just delaying the inevitable. Then what do you suggest? Eliza straightened, wiping her hands on her jeans. I've been thinking, there's a co-op in town that buys hay. If we can get a crop in next spring, we could sell to them. It won't make us rich, but it'll help. We don't have the equipment for a hay operation. We rent it, or we partner with someone who does. And in the meantime? In the meantime, I pick up shifts at the diner in town. Rowan stared at her. You're already working 18-hour days. Then I'll work 20. Liza, we don't have a choice, Rowan. Either we figure this out, or we lose everything. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was doing too much, that she needed to slow down, but he knew she was right. They were barely holding on as it was. Fine, he said. But I'm picking up work too. Doing what? I don't know. I'll figure it out. She nodded, went back to mucking stalls. Rowan watched her for a moment, then turned and walked back to the house. That afternoon, he drove into town and started asking around. The hardware store didn't need help. The grocery store was cutting hours, not adding them. But the feedlot on the edge of town was hiring for weekend shifts, hard labor, minimum wage, no benefits. Rowan took it without hesitation. When he got home, Eliza was cooking dinner. He told her about the job. She didn't smile, didn't congratulate him, just nodded. Good, that'll help. They ate in silence. Lila, sensing the tension, didn't ask questions. After dinner, Eliza went upstairs to put her to bed. Rowan sat at the table, staring at the checkbook in front of him. The numbers didn't lie. They were running out of time. When Eliza came back down, she sat across from him. We'll make it work. You keep saying that. Because it's true. How do you know? Because I have to. Rowan looked at her, this woman who'd shown up 4 months ago with a suitcase and a kid and a refusal to quit. She was exhausted. He could see it in the lines around her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped when she thought no one was looking. But she didn't stop, didn't break. I don't know how you do it, he said. Do what? Keep going. Even when it's hard. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I don't have a choice, and neither do you. The weeks bled into each other after that. Rowan worked the ranch during the week and the feedlot on weekends. Eliza picked up shifts at the diner, waitressing breakfast and lunch crowds. Lila spent more time with a neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Kowalski, who didn't mind watching her for a few hours after school. The work was brutal. Rowan came home every night sore, exhausted, barely able to keep his eyes open through dinner. Eliza looked the same, hollow-eyed, worn down, running on fumes. But they kept going. Because what else were they going to do? One Saturday in late November, Rowan came home from the feedlot to find Eliza sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. He froze in the doorway. "What's wrong?" She didn't look up. "The truck's dying." "What?" "The transmission. It's going. Mechanic says it'll cost $1,200 to fix." Rowan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "We don't have $1,200. I know. Can we drive it as is?" "For now. But it won't last." He sat down across from her, suddenly too tired to stand. "We can't catch a break, can we?" "Apparently not." They sat in silence. Outside, snow was falling again, thick and heavy. The wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the house, Lila was singing to herself. "We could ask for a loan," Eliza said finally. "From who? The bank already owns half this place." "I don't know. Someone. Anyone." "There is no one." She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "Then we figure it out. We always do." "Do we?" "Yes." But for the first time, Rowan heard doubt in her voice. Just a trace, just enough to notice. And it scared him more than anything. The truck lasted another 3 weeks. Then, on a Tuesday morning in mid-December, it died completely. Rowan turned the key, heard the engine cough, sputter, and go silent. He tried again. Nothing. "Damn it!" Eliza was beside him in the passenger seat, already pulling out her phone. "I'll call the mechanic. We can't afford—" "I know, but maybe he'll let us pay in installments." The mechanic, a grizzled man named Pete, who'd been fixing trucks in Caldwell for 30 years, towed the truck to his shop and gave them the bad news. Transmission was shot. $1,200 to fix, and that was him cutting them a deal. "Can you do payments?" Eliza asked. Pete scratched his jaw. "I can do $300 now, the rest in installments, but I need something up front." Eliza looked at Rowan. Rowan looked at the ground. "We'll get you the money," Eliza said. They walked back to the ranch. 3 miles in the cold, their breath fogging, their feet crunching through snow. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say. That night, Eliza sold her wedding ring. Rowan didn't know until he saw the cash on the table, $300 in 20s and 10s. He stared at it, then at her. "Where did this come from? Does it matter?" "Eliza." She didn't look at him. "It's just a ring." "It was your ring, from Daniel. Daniel's dead, and we need the truck." Rowan felt something twist in his chest. "You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did." She finally met his eyes. "It's just a thing, Rowan. Things don't matter. This place matters. Lila matters. We matter. A ring doesn't change that." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she shouldn't have done it, but he knew it wouldn't make a difference. Eliza had made her choice, and she didn't make choices lightly. The next morning, he gave Pete the $300. The truck was ready 2 days later. It ran rough, but it ran. That was all they needed. Christmas came and went. They didn't have money for presents, but Eliza baked cookies, and Rowan found an old sled in the barn and fixed it up for Lila. They spent Christmas morning sledding down the hill behind the house, Lila shrieking with laughter, Eliza and Rowan taking turns pulling her back up. That night, after Lila went to bed, they sat by the fire. Rowan had splurged on a bottle of wine, cheap, but drinkable. They shared it in silence, the firelight flickering across their faces. "This isn't what I thought it would be," Eliza said quietly. "What do you mean?" "This, us, the ranch. I thought, I don't know, I thought it would be simpler. Work hard, fix the problems, move forward. But it's not simple." "No, it's not." "Do you regret it, letting us come here?" Rowan looked at her. "No, do you regret coming?" She thought about it. "No, but I'm tired, Rowan. I'm so tired." He reached over, took her hand. She let him. They sat like that until the fire burned down to embers. January was the coldest month Rowan could remember. The temperature dropped below 0 and stayed there. Pipes froze. The barn heater broke. One of the cows got sick and died before they could call the vet. Every day brought a new problem, a new crisis, a new reason to give up. But they didn't. Eliza kept working, kept pushing. Rowan followed her lead. And Lila kept them both sane. She made them laugh when they didn't want to. She asked questions that had nothing to do with money or cattle or survival. She reminded them why they were doing this. One night in late January, Rowan was reading to her before bed. She interrupted him halfway through the story. Do you like us being here? He set the book down. Of course I do. Why would you ask that? Because you always look sad. Rowan's chest tightened. I'm not sad. Yes, you are. Mom is too. But she won't say it. He didn't know how to respond to that. Lila was 7 years old. She shouldn't have to notice things like that. Things are hard right now, he said finally, but that doesn't mean I don't want you here. Promise? Promise. She seemed satisfied with that. She curled up against him, and he went back to reading, but her words stayed with him long after she fell asleep. That night he told Eliza what Lila had said. Eliza's face went tight. She shouldn't have to worry about that. I know. We need to do better. We're doing the best we can. That's not good enough. Rowan didn't argue, because she was right. It wasn't good enough. They were surviving, but barely, and survival wasn't the same as living. In February, something shifted. It started small. Rowan got a call from a man named Jack Hendricks, who owned a spread 20 miles north. Jack needed help moving cattle and was willing to pay cash. Rowan took the job, spent 2 days working 16-hour shifts, and came home with $500. Then Eliza got word that the diner was expanding, adding dinner service. They offered her a manager position, more hours but better pay and actual benefits. She took it without hesitation, and the ranch itself, slowly, grudgingly, started to stabilize. The herd was healthy, the fences held, the bills got paid, if barely. It wasn't much, but it was something. One evening in early March, Rowan walked the fence line again. The snow was melting, revealing dead grass and mud beneath. The air smelled like thaw and earth. Spring was coming. They'd made it through the winter. Eliza found him there, her hands shoved in her pockets. We did it, she said. Did what? Made it. We made it through. Rowan looked at her. She looked exhausted, worn down, older than she had 6 months ago. But she was still standing. They both were. Yeah, he said. I guess we did. She smiled, just a little, just enough. And for the first time in a long time, Rowan thought maybe they'd be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. That was enough. Spring came slowly that year, reluctant and uneven. The snow melted in patches, leaving the ground half frozen, half mud. The days stretched longer, but the nights still bit cold. Rowan spent most of March repairing winter damage, replacing boards on the barn, fixing broken gates, patching holes in the hay shed roof that had somehow survived the collapse but wouldn't make it through another season without help. Eliza threw herself into the diner job with the same relentless focus she brought to everything else. She worked breakfast and lunch shifts, came home long enough to check on Lila and the ranch, then went back for dinner service. Rowan watched her burn through energy she didn't have, watched the exhaustion settle deeper into her bones, but he didn't say anything. What could he say? They needed the money. She knew it. He knew it. Talking about it wouldn't change anything. One afternoon in early April, Rowan was in the barn when he heard a car pull up. He walked outside to find a silver sedan parked in the driveway, a woman climbing out. She was maybe 30, wearing a blazer and jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked around the property with an expression Rowan couldn't quite read. Can I help you? He called. She turned, smiled. Are you Rowan Caldwell? That's me. She walked over, hand extended. I'm Rebecca Chen. I work for the County Extension Office. We've been trying to reach you about some grant opportunities. Rowan shook her hand, confused. Grant opportunities? For small ranchers. The state allocated funding for infrastructure improvements, sustainable grazing practices, that kind of thing. Your name came up in our database as someone who might qualify. I didn't apply for anything. Someone did. 6 weeks ago. Rebecca pulled a folder from her bag, flipped it open. Application came through under the name Eliza Caldwell. That's you, right? Your wife? Rowan stared at the paperwork. Eliza's handwriting, neat and precise, filled every line. She'd listed the ranch's acreage, the herd size, the infrastructure needs. She'd outlined a plan for rotational grazing, for fence improvements, for water system upgrades. It was thorough, detailed, and she'd never mentioned it. Yeah, he said slowly, that's my wife. Rebecca smiled. Good. Well, I'm here to do a site inspection. If everything checks out, you could be looking at up to $15,000 in grant funding. Rowan felt something shift in his chest. 15,000. That was fence repairs, new water troughs, maybe even a down payment on better equipment. That was breathing room. When do we find out? He asked. I'll file my report by the end of the week. You should hear back within a month. She spent the next 2 hours walking the property, taking notes, asking questions. Rowan answered as best he could, but his mind was elsewhere. Eliza had done this, had applied for a grant, had outlined a plan, had done it all without saying a word, because that's who she was. She saw a problem and fixed it, or at least tried to. When Rebecca left, Rowan stood in the driveway and watched her car disappear down the road. Then he went inside and waited. Eliza got home around 7, smelling like fryer grease and coffee. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her bag on the counter, and headed straight for the sink to wash her hands. "How was your day?" she asked. "Interesting. Had a visitor." "Yeah? Who?" "Woman from the county extension office. Said you applied for a grant." Eliza froze, her hands under the running water. She didn't turn around. "Oh, that. Yeah, that. Were you going to tell me? I didn't want to get your hopes up." She shut off the water, dried her hands on a towel. "It's a long shot. I figured if it came through, I'd tell you then." "Eliza." "What? You can't just—" He stopped, tried to find the right words. "We're supposed to be partners. You can't make decisions like that without telling me." She turned to face him, her expression flat. "I filled out a form, Rowan. I didn't sell the ranch. There's a difference." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" "The point is I should have known." "Why? So you could talk me out of it? Tell me it's not worth the effort?" "I wouldn't have—" "Yes, you would." Her voice was sharp now, cutting. "Because that's what you do. You assume things won't work out, so you don't even try." "Well, I'm not like that. I see a chance. I take it. That's how we've survived this long." Rowan felt heat rise in his chest. "I've been trying. Every damn day I've been trying." "I know, but trying isn't the same as believing." They stared at each other across the kitchen, the silence heavy between them. Upstairs, Lila's voice drifted down. She was singing something off-key and cheerful, oblivious to the tension below. Finally, Eliza sighed. "I'm sorry. I should have told you, but I'm not sorry I did it. I'm not asking you to be." "Good." She walked past him, headed upstairs. Rowan stood alone in the kitchen, feeling something he couldn't name. Anger, maybe, or frustration, or just exhaustion. He didn't know anymore. The grant came through 3 weeks later, $14,800. Not quite the full amount, but close enough. The check arrived on a Tuesday, and Eliza stared at it for a full minute before setting it on the table. "We did it," she said quietly. Rowan picked up the check, turned it over in his hands. It felt impossible. Felt like something that happened to other people, not to them. "What do we do first?" he asked. "Fences. Then water system. Then we see what's left." They spent the next 2 months working like they'd never worked before. Rowan hired a crew to help replace the worst sections of fence, using the grant money to buy materials and pay for labor. Eliza coordinated everything, ordered supplies, scheduled deliveries, kept track of expenses down to the last cent. Together they installed new water troughs in the south pasture, upgraded the irrigation system, repaired the gates that had been held together with wire and prayers. Lila helped where she could, mostly by staying out of the way and bringing them water when they forgot to stop for breaks. She'd grown in the past year, taller, more confident, more at home on the ranch than Rowan would have thought possible. She knew the names of all the cows now, had favorite spots to sit and read, could navigate the property without getting lost. She belonged here. That was the thing that surprised him most. She belonged. By June, the ranch looked different. Not perfect. Nothing about it was perfect, but functional, solid. The fences stood straight. The water ran clean. The cattle grazed in rotated pastures, the grass healthier than it had been in years. One evening, Rowan and Eliza stood at the edge of the north pasture, watching the sunset paint the valley in shades of orange and pink. They didn't talk, just stood there, side by side, breathing. "We should celebrate," Eliza said after a while. "Celebrate what?" "Making it this far. Not giving up." "What did you have in mind?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Dinner in town, maybe? Just the three of us." "You hate eating out." "I hate wasting money. But we've got a little room now." We can afford one meal. They went to the diner where Eliza worked, which felt strange, but also fitting. The owner, a woman named Marie who'd been running the place for 30 years, gave them a corner booth and didn't charge them for Lila's milkshake. They ate burgers and fries and pie, and for 1 hour they didn't talk about the ranch or money or what came next. They just ate and laughed and existed. Walking back to the truck, Lila slipped her hand into Rowan's. It was such a small thing, so automatic, but it hit him like a fist to the chest. She trusted him. This kid who wasn't his, who'd only known him for a year, trusted him enough to reach for his hand without thinking. "You okay?" Eliza asked, noticing the look on his face. "Yeah," he said. "I'm good." That night, after Lila went to bed, Rowan sat at the kitchen table with a blank piece of paper in front of him. He'd been thinking about it for weeks. What Eliza had said about calling his kids, about time not fixing things. He'd been thinking about Lila's hand in his, about the way she looked at him like he mattered. He picked up the pen and started writing. "Claire, I know it's been a long time. Too long. I don't have a good excuse for that except that I didn't know what to say. Still don't, really, but I'm writing anyway because I think you should know what's been happening here. I got remarried. Her name is Eliza. She's got a daughter, Lila, who's 7. They moved here last year and we've been working the ranch together. It's been hard, but we're making it work. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just thought you should know. And I wanted to say I'm sorry for not being there after your mom died, for not coming to your wedding, for letting so much time pass without reaching out. I was stuck, and I didn't know how to get unstuck. But I'm trying now. If you want to talk, I'm here. If you don't, I understand. Dad." He folded the letter, addressed an envelope, and set it aside. Then he wrote another one to Michael. Same message, different details. When he finished, he sat back and stared at both envelopes. Eliza came downstairs, poured herself a glass of water, noticed the letters. "You wrote them?" "Yeah." "Are you going to send them?" "I don't know." She sat down across from him. "What are you afraid of?" "That they won't write back. Or that they will, and they'll tell me to go to hell. And if they do, then at least I tried." Eliza picked up one of the envelopes, turned it over in her hands. "You should send them. Even if it doesn't work out, you should try." "Yeah," Rowan said. "I know." He mailed the letters the next day, then he waited. 3 weeks later, Claire called. Rowan was in the barn when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello? Dad?" Her voice was tentative, unsure. Rowan's throat went tight. "Claire, I got your letter." "Yeah, He didn't know what to say. "Thanks for calling." "I wasn't going to. I started to delete your number about 5 times, but then I thought, screw it, I'll call." "I'm glad you did." There was a long pause. Then Claire said, "So you got remarried?" "Yeah." Wow, I didn't see that coming." "Neither did I." "What's she like, Eliza?" Rowan leaned against the barn wall, trying to figure out how to explain. "She's tough. Doesn't take any crap. Works harder than anyone I've ever met. She showed up here with her kid and basically saved this place from falling apart." "And the kid, Lila?" "She's good, smart, asks a million questions. You'd like her." Claire was quiet again. Then she said, "I'm sorry I didn't come back after Mom died. I should have." "You had your own life." "That's not an excuse." "Maybe not, but I get it." Rowan swallowed hard. "I'm sorry I didn't come to your wedding." "Yeah, that one hurt." "I know, I don't know what I was. Stuck, I guess." "Are you still stuck?" He thought about it. About Eliza and Lila and the ranch and the past year, about all the work and the fights and the moments when he'd wanted to quit but hadn't. "No," he said. "I don't think I am." They talked for another 20 minutes. It was awkward, stilted, full of long pauses and careful words. But it was something. It was a start. When they hung up, Rowan stood in the barn for a long time, his phone still in his hand. Then he went to find Eliza. She was in the garden, another project she'd started, planting vegetables in neat rows behind the house. She looked up when he approached, dirt on her hands and knees. "Claire called," he said. Eliza's expression softened. "How'd it go?" "It was good. Hard, but good." "You gonna talk?" She smiled, a real smile, not the tired ones she usually gave. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For trying." Rowan helped her finish planting, the two of them working in silence. When they were done, they went inside and washed up. Lila was at the table doing homework, her tongue sticking out in concentration. The house smelled like the stew Eliza had started that morning. The evening light slanted through the windows. For the first time in years, Rowan felt something close to peace. But peace didn't last long on a ranch. In mid-July, one of the heifers went into labor and got into trouble. Rowan spent 6 hours in the barn with her, trying to help, but the calf came breech and didn't make it. The heifer survived, but barely. The vet bill wiped out most of what they'd saved from Eliza's diner paychecks. Then the truck started making a grinding noise that Pete said was the differential. Another $1,200 they didn't have. Then Lila got sick. Just a bad flu. Nothing serious, but she missed a week of school and Eliza had to take time off work to stay home with her. The hits kept coming, one after another, and Rowan felt the old despair creeping back in. The feeling that no matter how hard they worked, the ranch would always find a way to break them. One night, he said as much to Eliza. They were sitting on the porch, too tired to go inside, watching the stars come out. "This place is cursed," he said. "It's not cursed, it's just hard." "Same thing." "No, it's not." She looked at him, her face shadowed in the dim light. "A curse is something you can't fight. This is just life. And we're fighting it. Are we winning? We're still here, aren't we?" "Barely." "Barely is enough." He wanted to believe her, wanted to feel the same certainty she seemed to carry, but all he felt was tired. "What if it's not?" he asked. "What if we work ourselves to death, and it's still not enough? Then at least we tried." "That's not comforting." "It's not supposed to be. It's just true." They sat in silence for a while. Then Eliza said, "Michael ever write back?" "No." "You going to try again?" "I don't know. Maybe." "You should." "Why?" "He clearly doesn't want to talk to me." "You don't know that. Maybe the letter got lost. Maybe he's thinking about it. Maybe he's as scared as you are." Rowan didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. August brought a heat wave that turned the valley into an oven. The grass dried out, the cattle grew restless, and tempers ran short. Rowan and Eliza fought more than usual, small things mostly, but the heat and the stress made everything feel bigger. They argued about money, about chores, about whether Lila should get a new pair of shoes or make do with the ones she had. The worst fight came on a Thursday night. Rowan had spent the day moving cattle to a new pasture, and when he came home, the house was a mess. Dishes in the sink, laundry on the floor, Lila's toys scattered everywhere. Eliza was at the table, staring at a pile of bills, her face pale. "What's wrong?" he asked. "The property tax bill came." "How much?" $4,000. Rowan felt his stomach drop. "We don't have $4,000. "I know." "When's it due?" "End of the month." He sat down, his legs suddenly weak. "We can't do this. We can't keep doing this. We don't have a choice." "Yes, we do. We sell. We take what we can get, and we leave." Eliza's head snapped up. "We're not selling." "Why not? We're killing ourselves for a place that's killing us." "Because this is our home." "It's not a home, Eliza. It's a trap." She stood, her face flushed. "You want to quit?" "Fine. Quit. But I'm not. I didn't come all the way out here just to give up the first time things got hard. The first time? This is the 10th time, the 20th. We've been fighting this place for over a year, and we're losing." "We're not losing. We're surviving." "That's not enough." The words hung between them, sharp and raw. Lila appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Are you getting divorced?" she asked, her voice small. Eliza's face crumpled. "No, baby, we're just talking." "It sounds like fighting." "It is fighting, but that doesn't mean we're giving up on each other." Lila looked between them, unconvinced. Then she turned and ran upstairs. They heard her door slam. Rowan put his head in his hands. "I can't do this." "Yes, you can." "No, I can't. I'm not strong enough." Eliza walked over, knelt in front of him. "Yes, you are. You're the strongest person I know." That's a lie. No, it's not. She took his hands, made him look at her. You've been carrying this place on your back for 7 years. You've been carrying grief and guilt and loneliness, and you're still standing. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does. They stayed like that for a long time, Eliza on her knees, Rowan hunched in the chair. Finally, he said, "How do we pay the taxes?" "I don't know yet, but we will." "You're sure?" "No, but I'm not giving up." Rowan pulled her up, wrapped his arms around her. She leaned into him, and they stood there in the middle of the messy kitchen, holding each other like it was the only thing keeping them upright. The next morning, Rowan called Jack Hendricks, the rancher who'd hired him before. Jack had more work: fence repair, cattle sorting, general labor. Rowan took it all. Eliza picked up extra shifts. They worked every hour they could find, pushing themselves past exhaustion, past sense. And somehow, by the end of the month, they scraped together enough to pay the taxes. It wasn't a victory. It was barely survival. But it was enough. September brought cooler weather and a kind of fragile stability. The ranch settled into a rhythm. Not easy, not comfortable, but manageable. They worked, they ate, they slept. They got up and did it again. Rowan called Claire once a week now. The conversations were still awkward, but less so. She told him about her job, her husband, the house they were buying. He told her about the ranch, about Eliza and Lila, about the work that never seemed to end. It wasn't much, but it was connection. It was something. Michael still hadn't responded to the letter. Rowan tried not to think about it, tried not to let it hurt. But it did. One evening in late September, Rowan was walking the fence line when he saw Eliza coming toward him, something in her hand. When she got close, he saw it was an envelope. "This came for you," she said. The return address was Georgia, Michael's handwriting. Rowan took the envelope, his hands shaking. He wrote back, "You going to open it?" "I don't know." "Want me to leave?" "No, stay." He tore open the envelope, pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Dad, got your letter. Took me a while to figure out what to say. I'm glad you're doing better. Glad you've got someone. I'm sorry I haven't been around. The Army keeps me busy, and Georgia's a long way from Montana. I'd like to talk sometime. Maybe I could call next week?" Michael Rowan read it twice, then handed it to Eliza. She read it, handed it back. "That's good," she said. "Yeah. You okay?" He folded the letter, put it back in the envelope. "Yeah, I think I am." They walked back to the house together, the sun setting behind them, the valley darkening. Inside, Lila was setting the table for dinner, humming to herself. The house smelled like roast chicken and potatoes. It smelled like home. Rowan stood in the doorway, watching his wife and the girl who'd become his daughter, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, but something close. Hope, maybe. Or just the absence of despair. It was enough. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. Michael called on a Sunday afternoon in early October. Rowan was on the porch replacing boards that had rotted through when his phone rang. He looked at the number, unfamiliar area code, but he knew who it was before he answered. "Hello? Dad? It's Michael." Rowan set down the hammer, his chest tight. "Hey, good to hear from you." "Yeah, sorry it took so long. I wasn't sure what to say." "You don't have to apologize. I'm the one who should be apologizing." There was a pause, then Michael said, "Let's just skip that part. Okay?" "Okay." They talked for 40 minutes. Michael told him about his wife, Amanda, about their apartment in Augusta, about his work on base. He asked about the ranch, about Eliza and Lila. His voice was careful at first, guarded, but as the conversation went on, it loosened. By the end, they were almost talking like they used to, before Sarah died, before the silence. "I'd like to visit sometime," Michael said, "if that's all right." "You're always welcome here." "Maybe for Thanksgiving, if Amanda can get the time off." "That'd be good. Real good." When they hung up, Rowan sat on the porch for a long time, the phone still in his hand. He felt something unfamiliar, a kind of lightness in his chest, like a weight had shifted, not gone, just shifted. Eliza came out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "How'd it go?" "Good. He wants to come for Thanksgiving." She smiled. "That's great." "Yeah, it is." He looked at her. Claire, too. I called her last week, asked if she wanted to come. She said maybe. Maybe's better than no. That's what I figured. Eliza sat down beside him, and they watched Lila chase one of the barn cats across the yard. The girls' laughter carried on the wind, bright and clear. The valley stretched out around them, the grass turning gold under the autumn sun. We should fix up the house, Eliza said. If they're coming. It's fine the way it is. Rowan, the guest room has a hole in the ceiling. Small hole. It's the size of a dinner plate. He laughed despite himself. All right, we'll fix it. They spent the next 6 weeks preparing. Rowan patched the ceiling, painted the guest room, replaced the broken window in the bathroom. Eliza cleaned like the house had personally offended her, scrubbing floors, washing curtains, organizing closets that hadn't been touched in years. Lila helped where she could, mostly by asking questions and getting underfoot. Why are they coming? She asked one afternoon while Eliza was polishing furniture. Because they're family. But they've never been here before. That doesn't mean they're not family. Lila thought about this. Are they going to like me? Eliza stopped polishing, looked at her daughter. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they? I don't know. Because I'm not really part of the family? You are part of this family. Don't ever think you're not. But I'm not Rowan's real daughter. Eliza set down the polish, pulled Lila into her lap. Listen to me. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, the people who stay. You're Rowan's daughter because you're here, because he loves you. That's what makes it real. Does he love me? Yes, he does. How do you know? Because I see the way he looks at you, the way he listens when you talk, the way he fixes your breakfast just the way you like it, even though he pretends not to notice. That's love, baby. It doesn't always sound like I love you. Sometimes it just looks like showing up every day. Lila seemed satisfied with this. She wiggled out of Eliza's lap and went back to playing. But Eliza stayed where she was, thinking about her own words. About showing up. About love that didn't announce itself but was there anyway, steady and quiet. That night she told Rowan about the conversation. They were in bed, the house dark and quiet around them. She asked if you love her, Eliza said. Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What'd you tell her? That you do. You're sure about that? Yes. Are you? He thought about it. About the way Lila's hand felt in his, small and trusting. About reading to her at night, about teaching her to feed the chickens, about the way she said his name, not Dad, not yet, but Rowan, in a way that sounded like it meant something. Yeah, he said. I'm sure. Eliza reached over, found his hand in the dark. Good. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear. Michael and Amanda showed up Wednesday afternoon in a rental car, pulling into the driveway just as the sun was starting to set. Rowan stood on the porch, his heart hammering, watching his son climb out of the car. Michael looked older, harder. He'd filled out, put on muscle, carried himself with a kind of military precision that hadn't been there before. But when he saw Rowan, his face broke into a smile. Hey, Dad. Hey. Rowan walked down the steps, not sure what to do. Then Michael pulled him into a hug, and Rowan felt 7 years of distance collapse into that single moment. When they pulled apart, Michael turned to the woman beside him. This is Amanda. She was petite, with dark hair and a warm smile. It's nice to finally meet you, Mr. Caldwell. Rowan, please. Rowan. Eliza came out then, Lila close behind. Michael shook Eliza's hand, told her it was good to meet her. Amanda knelt down to Lila's level, asked her about the stuffed rabbit she was clutching. Within minutes, the awkwardness had eased, replaced by the simple mechanics of getting everyone inside and settled. Claire arrived the next morning, alone. Her husband had to work, she explained, but she'd wanted to come anyway. She looked like Sarah, same eyes, same smile, and seeing her made Rowan's chest ache in a way he hadn't expected. Hey, kiddo, he said when she got out of the car. Don't call me kiddo. I'm 30. You're still my kid. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Fair enough. Inside, she met Eliza and Lila, shook hands with Michael and Amanda. There was stiffness at first, too many years, too many unspoken things. But Eliza, practical as always, put everyone to work. Michael helped Rowan move furniture. Claire and Amanda peeled potatoes. Lila set the table, arranging silverware with serious concentration. By the time dinner was ready, the house was full in a way it hadn't been in years. Full of voices, of laughter, of people. Rowan stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching them all, and felt something close to overwhelmed. Eliza appeared beside him. "You okay?" "Yeah, it's a lot." "Good lot or bad lot?" "Good. Definitely good." They sat down to eat. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls, pie. The table was crowded, elbows bumping, voices overlapping. Michael told stories about the army. Claire talked about her job in Seattle. Amanda asked Lila about school, and Lila launched into a detailed explanation of her science project. At one point, Claire looked at Rowan and said, "This place looks good. Better than I remember." "Eliza's doing," Rowan said. "Not just mine," Eliza corrected. "We did it together." "Still, it's different. In a good way." After dinner, they moved to the living room. Someone found an old deck of cards, and they played poker for matchsticks. The rules loose, and the competition mostly friendly. Lila fell asleep on the couch, curled against Amanda. Michael and Rowan ended up on the porch, just the two of them, the night cold and the stars bright. "I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner," Michael said after a while. "You don't have to." "Yeah, I do. I should have been here. After Mom died, I should have stayed." "You had your own life." "That's what everyone keeps saying, but it feels like an excuse." Rowan lit a cigarette, offered one to Michael. His son took it, and they smoked in silence for a moment. "You know what I realized?" Michael said. "I was angry at you for a long time, for letting this place fall apart, for giving up. But I think I was really just angry at myself, for leaving, for not being here when you needed me. I didn't need you. I needed to figure my own shit out." "Did you?" Rowan thought about it, about the past 18 months, about Eliza and Lila and the work that never ended. "Yeah, I think I did." "Good." Michael flicked ash into the wind. "Eliza seems great, by the way. And Lila's a good kid." "She is." "You happy?" "Most days. You?" "Yeah, most days." They stayed out there until the cold drove them back inside. The house was quiet now, everyone settling in for the night. Rowan found Eliza in the kitchen, washing dishes. "Need help?" he asked. "Almost done." He picked up a towel, started drying. They worked in silence, the rhythm familiar and comfortable. "Today was good," Eliza said. "Yeah, it was." "Think they'll come back?" "I hope so." She handed him a plate. "You did good, Rowan. With them. With this. We did good, both of us." She smiled at that, and they finished the dishes together. The next morning, everyone pitched in to help with chores. Michael and Rowan moved hay, while Claire and Amanda helped Eliza in the garden. Lila gave everyone a tour of the ranch, pointing out her favorite spots. The old oak tree by the creek, the spot where she'd seen a fox, the rock that looked like a dinosaur if you squinted. By mid-afternoon, it was time for them to leave. Michael and Amanda had a flight to catch. Claire needed to get back to Seattle. The goodbyes were quick, a little awkward, but warmer than the hellos had been. "Come back soon," Rowan said. "We will," Claire promised. "And call more." "You too." He watched them drive away, their cars disappearing down the long driveway. When they were gone, he turned to find Eliza and Lila standing beside him. "That was nice," Lila said. "Yeah, it was." "Are they coming for Christmas?" "I don't know, maybe. I hope so. I like them." She ran off toward the house, leaving Rowan and Eliza alone. They stood there for a moment, not saying anything. Then Eliza slipped her hand into his. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, better than okay." Winter came hard that year. The first snow hit in mid-November, and by December the valley was buried. The temperatures dropped below zero and stayed there. Pipes froze, equipment broke, and the work became a grinding battle against the cold. But they'd learned how to fight by now, learned how to anticipate problems, how to fix things before they became disasters, how to keep moving even when everything hurt. The ranch didn't get easier, but they got better at handling it. Christmas was quiet. Just the three of them. They couldn't afford much, but Eliza made a ham, and Rowan found a small tree in the woods and dragged it back to the house. Lila decorated it with paper ornaments she'd made at school, and they strung popcorn for garland. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. On Christmas morning, Lila opened her presents. A new book, a scarf Eliza had knitted, a wooden box Rowan had made for her treasures. She hugged them both so hard Rowan thought his ribs might crack. This is the best Christmas ever, she said. You say that every year, Eliza teased, because it's true every year. That afternoon, Claire called. Then Michael. They talked about nothing important, just checking in, just staying connected. When Rowan hung up, he felt something settle in his chest. Not happiness exactly, but contentment. A sense that things were where they were supposed to be. January brought new challenges. One of the water troughs cracked in the cold, flooding the south pasture before they could shut it off. The tractor broke down, and this time Pete couldn't fix it. They had to buy a used one from a rancher 3 counties over, which ate into their savings. But they kept going. Because that's what they did now. They kept going. One night in late January, Rowan found Eliza sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a spreadsheet. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, her shoulders hunched. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing. Just trying to figure out the numbers for spring planting." "It's January. We've got time." "I know, but I like to plan ahead." He sat down across from her. "Eliza, when's the last time you took a day off?" "I don't know. Why?" "Because you're going to burn out if you don't slow down. I'll slow down when we're stable." "We are stable. We're doing okay." She looked at him, and for the first time he saw something close to fear in her eyes. "Are we?" "Because it feels like we're always one disaster away from losing everything." "We've been one disaster away from losing everything for 18 months. We're still here. That doesn't mean we'll always be." Rowan reached across the table, covered her hand with his. "Nothing's guaranteed, but we're stronger now than we were. The ranch is stronger. We can handle whatever comes." "How do you know?" "Because we've already handled everything else." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she closed the laptop, pushed it aside. "Okay. Okay? Okay, I'll take a day off next Sunday. We'll do something that's not work." "Like what?" "I don't know. Something normal." The following Sunday, they drove into town and saw a movie. It was a stupid comedy that neither of them would have chosen on their own, but Lila wanted to see it, so they went. They ate popcorn and laughed at jokes that weren't that funny, and sat in the dark for 2 hours doing nothing productive. On the way home, Lila fell asleep in the back seat. Rowan glanced at Eliza in the passenger seat, saw her smiling. "What?" he asked. "Nothing, just, that was nice. We should do it more often." "Yeah, we should." By February, the ranch had found a rhythm. Not easy, never easy, but manageable. The bills got paid, the cattle stayed healthy, the house stayed warm. Small victories, but they added up. One afternoon, Rowan was in the barn when he heard shouting. He ran outside to find Lila standing in the snow, pointing at something in the distance. "What's wrong?" he called. "There's a cow stuck." He followed her pointing finger and saw one of the heifers trapped in a drainage ditch, struggling to get out. He grabbed a rope and ran. The heifer was panicked, thrashing in the icy water. Rowan waded in, the cold hitting him like a fist, and looped the rope around her. Eliza appeared, saw what was happening, and grabbed the other end of the rope. Together they pulled, their boots slipping in the mud, their breath coming in ragged gasps. It took 20 minutes, but they got the heifer out. She staggered onto solid ground, shaking and wild-eyed but alive. Rowan collapsed in the snow, soaking wet and freezing. "You okay?" Eliza asked, kneeling beside him. "Yeah, just cold." "Let's get you inside." That night he came down with a fever. Eliza made him stay in bed, brought him soup and water and aspirin. He tried to protest, said he had work to do, but she wasn't having it. "The ranch can survive one day without you," she said. "Stay in bed." So he did. And as he lay there, drifting in and out of sleep, he heard Eliza and Lila moving around the house. Heard them feeding the chickens, checking on the cattle, doing all the things that needed doing. He'd spent so many years thinking he had to carry everything alone. But he didn't. Not anymore. By March, the worst of winter was over. The snow melted, revealing mud and dead grass and the promise of spring. Rowan walked the fence line, checking for damage, and found himself thinking about the past 2 years, about how different everything was, how different he was. He wasn't fixed, wasn't perfect, still had days when the weight of it all felt crushing, but he wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. One evening, he found Lila on the porch, her rabbit in her lap, staring at the sunset. "Hey," he said, sitting down beside her. "Hey, what are you thinking about?" She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Can I call you Dad?" Rowan's throat went tight. "You want to?" "Yeah, if that's okay." "It's more than okay." She looked at him, her green eyes serious. "You won't leave, right? You'll stay?" "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." She leaned against him, and they sat there together, watching the sun go down. Inside, Eliza was making dinner, her voice drifting through the open window. The valley spread out around them, harsh and beautiful, and home. Rowan thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago, broken, alone, waiting for the end. That man was gone. In his place was someone who still struggled, still failed, still fought battles he didn't always win, but someone who had people, who had purpose, who had hope. The ranch was still hard, the work was still endless, but it didn't feel like drowning anymore. It felt like living, and that was enough. Spring came late that year, hesitant and uncertain. The snow melted in fits and starts, leaving the ground waterlogged and stubborn. Rowan spent most of April ankle-deep in mud, repairing fences and clearing ditches while Eliza worked on getting the garden ready for planting. Lila, who insisted on being called Lila Caldwell now, though they hadn't made it legal yet, helped where she could, her enthusiasm outpacing her usefulness, but nobody minded. The herd had grown to 73 head, not huge but respectable, enough to keep them afloat if they managed things right. Eliza had started keeping meticulous records, breeding schedules, health notes, feed costs, all tracked in a series of notebooks she stored on a shelf in the kitchen. Rowan had teased her about it at first, but he'd come to rely on her system. It worked. She worked. They worked. One morning in early May, Rowan was in the barn when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Tom Brennan from High Plains Bank." Rowan's stomach dropped. The bank. Nothing good ever came from the bank calling. "Yeah?" "I wanted to reach out personally to let you know that your account has been current for 12 consecutive months. That's a significant milestone, and we wanted to acknowledge it." Rowan stood there, the phone pressed to his ear, trying to process what he was hearing. "Current? You mean all payments on time, no missed installments. Your credit standing has improved substantially. In fact, we'd like to discuss refinancing options that might lower your monthly obligations." When he hung up, Rowan just stood there, staring at nothing. 12 months. They'd been current for 12 months. He hadn't even realized. He found Eliza in the house, making lunch. "The bank just called." She froze, a knife halfway through a tomato. "What'd they say?" "We're current, 12 months. They want to talk about refinancing." The knife clattered onto the cutting board. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Are you serious?" "Yeah." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Eliza started crying. Not sad crying, something else. Relief, maybe. Or exhaustion finally catching up. Rowan crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, and she buried her face in his shoulder and shook. "We did it," she said, her voice muffled against his shirt. "We actually did it." "You did it, most of it anyway." "No, we did it together." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the middle of the kitchen while the half-made sandwiches sat forgotten on the counter. That afternoon, they drove into town and met with Tom Brennan. He walked them through refinancing options, lower interest rates, extended terms, reduced monthly payments. It wouldn't eliminate the debt, but it would make it manageable. More than manageable. Sustainable. "You've done impressive work turning this operation around," Tom said, shuffling papers. 2 years ago, we were preparing to foreclose. Now you're one of our most reliable accounts." Rowan glanced at Eliza. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, but he could see the tremor in her fingers. She'd carried so much of this weight, pushed so hard for so long, and now someone was acknowledging it, seeing it. "Thank you," Rowan said. "We appreciate the opportunity." They signed the papers, shook hands, walked back out into the spring sunshine. In the truck, Eliza let out a long breath. "I didn't think we'd make it," she said quietly. "Yeah, you did." "No, I mean, I hoped we would, but I didn't know. There were nights I laid awake thinking we'd lose everything, thinking I'd dragged Lila out here for nothing. But you didn't stop. Because I couldn't. Because stopping meant failing, and I don't know how to do that." Rowan reached over, took her hand. "You know what I learned from you?" "What?" "That failing isn't about falling down. It's about not getting back up. And you always get back up. She squeezed his hand. So do you. They drove home in comfortable silence, and when they got there, Lila was waiting on the porch with a drawing she'd made at school. It was the ranch, the house, the barn, the cows, 3 stick figures labeled Mom, Dad, and me. She'd drawn a sun in the corner with a smiley face. It's for the refrigerator, she announced. Eliza took it, studied it seriously. This is excellent work, very professional. Do you like the cows? I made them brown because that's what color they are. The cows are perfect. That night, after Lila went to bed, Rowan and Eliza sat on the porch with glasses of whiskey. It had become a ritual on good days, sitting out there, watching the stars come out, not talking about work or money or problems, just existing. I've been thinking, Eliza said after a while. About? Expanding. Not the herd, not yet, but maybe some chickens, more than we've got now. We could sell eggs in town. That's more work. Everything's more work. But it's income, diversified income. If the cattle market tanks, we've got eggs. If eggs tank, we've got cattle. Rowan considered it. A year ago, the idea of taking on more would have made him want to quit. Now it just seemed logical. How many chickens? I don't know. 50? 100? I'd need to build a bigger coop. We'd need to build a bigger coop, she smiled. Right, we. The chicken operation started small, 60 birds in an expanded coop. Rowan and Jack Hendricks built over 2 weekends. Eliza worked out a deal with Marie at the diner to supply eggs at a discount, and within a month they had a waiting list from other restaurants in town. The chickens turned out to be easier than cattle, though they came with their own problems. A fox got into the coop one night and killed 7 birds before Rowan shot it. Lila cried over every single dead chicken, and Eliza sat with her in the barn, explaining that this was part of ranch life. Things died. You mourned them and moved on. But it's not fair, Lila sobbed. No, it's not. But fair doesn't mean much out here. What matters is that we tried to protect them, and we'll do better next time. How? Better fencing, better locks. We learn and we adapt. I don't want to adapt. I want them not to die. Eliza pulled her daughter close. I know, baby. I know. By June, the ranch was running smoother than it had in years. The fences held. The cattle were healthy. The eggs sold. The bills got paid with money left over. Actual savings. Rowan opened a separate account for it, watched the number grow, slowly, but it grew. Claire called one evening and said she was pregnant. Rowan felt something catch in his chest. Joy and fear and a complicated tangle of emotion he couldn't name. Congratulations, he said. Thanks. I'm terrified. That's normal. Were you terrified? When Mom was pregnant with me? Rowan thought back to that time. Him at 23, Sarah at 22, both of them too young and too stubborn to admit they didn't know what they were doing. Yeah, I was, but it turned out okay. Did it? The question hung between them. Honest, raw. Yeah, Rowan said finally. It did. You turned out pretty good. Even though we haven't talked in years? That's on me, not you. It's on both of us. But we're talking now. That's something. It is. I want you to meet the baby, when it comes. I want them to know their grandfather. Rowan's throat went tight. I'd like that. After they hung up, he told Eliza. She was at the stove, stirring soup, and she looked up with that small smile she got when she was pleased about something. You're going to be a grandfather. Yeah, weird, right? Not weird, good. I don't know how to be a grandfather. You didn't know how to be a father to Lila either. Seems like you figured it out. He thought about that. About the past 2 years. About reading bedtime stories and fixing breakfast and showing up every single day, even when he didn't know what he was doing. I'm still figuring it out. That's parenting. You never stop figuring it out. Michael called a week later with his own news. He and Amanda were leaving the Army, moving to Montana. Not to Caldwell, but to Billings, 2 hours away. Close enough to visit. Close enough to be part of things. I'm done with Georgia, Michael said. Done with the South. I want to come home. Montana's home? It is now. Or it will be. Amanda's got a job lined up at a hospital there. I'm looking at contracting work. We want to be closer to family. We'd like that. Yeah? Yeah. Things Rowan had thought were broken, his relationships with his kids, his connection to something beyond survival. They weren't fixed exactly, but they were healing, slowly, imperfectly, but healing. In July, Lila turned 9. They threw her a party, small, just a few kids from school and their parents, but it was enough. Eliza baked a cake. Rowan set up games in the yard. Lila ran around in a purple dress she'd picked out herself, her face flushed with happiness. Watching her, Rowan felt something settle in his chest. This kid who'd shown up 2 years ago, quiet and uncertain, she'd grown into herself here, found confidence, found home, and he'd been part of that. He and Eliza both. That night, after the guests left and Lila was in bed, Rowan found the papers he'd been avoiding for months. Adoption papers. He'd picked them up from a lawyer in town back in April, but hadn't known how to bring it up, hadn't wanted to push. But watching Lila today, hearing her call him Dad without hesitation, he knew it was time. He brought them to Eliza. She was on the porch, feet up on the railing, a book in her lap. "What's this?" she asked, taking the folder. "Adoption papers for Lila. I want to make it official." Eliza opened the folder, scanned the first page. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure about anything." "She's going to lose her mind when we tell her." "Good kind of losing it?" "The best kind." They told her the next morning at breakfast. Lila stared at them, a spoonful of cereal halfway to her mouth. "You mean you'll be my actual dad? Legally?" "If you want that," Rowan said. "Are you kidding? Of course I want that." She dropped the spoon, jumped out of her chair, and threw herself at Rowan. He caught her, hugged her tight, and felt something in his chest crack open. Not breaking. Opening. "Does this mean I can tell people you're my dad and it's not just pretend?" she asked, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "It was never pretend. But yeah, now it's official." She pulled back, looked at him seriously. "Can I change my last name? To Caldwell? If you want to." "I want to. Lila Caldwell sounds good. It sounds perfect." The paperwork took 3 months. By October, it was done. Lila Hart became Lila Caldwell, and they celebrated with another cake and another small party. This time, Michael and Amanda drove up from Billings, and Claire called from Seattle, and for a few hours the house was full of noise and people, and the feeling that everything had somehow come together. That winter was hard, but all Montana winters were hard. The difference was they were ready for it. They'd weathered 2 winters already, knew what to expect, knew how to prepare. The pipes didn't freeze. The barn heater worked. The cattle stayed healthy. They made it through without crisis, without disaster, without feeling like they were one mistake away from losing everything. In February, Claire had her baby, a girl named Emma. Rowan flew to Seattle, his first time on a plane in over a decade. He held his granddaughter in the hospital, this tiny thing with dark hair and Sarah's eyes, and felt the past and present collapse into each other. "She's beautiful," he told Claire. "She looks like a potato." "A beautiful potato." Claire laughed, tired and happy. "Thanks for coming. Wouldn't have missed it. I mean it. I know it's hard for you to leave the ranch." "The ranch will be fine. Eliza's got it handled." "You got lucky with her." "I know." He stayed for 3 days, long enough to help out, to hold the baby while Claire slept, to feel like he was part of his daughter's life again. When he flew home, Eliza picked him up at the airport in Billings. Lila was in the back seat, and she'd made a welcome home sign that she held up as he walked out of the terminal. "How was it?" Eliza asked as they drove. "Good. Really good." "How's the baby?" "Perfect. Loud, but perfect." Lila leaned forward between the seats. "Did you tell Claire about the chickens?" "I did. She was very impressed." "Good, because we got 8 more eggs today. That's a record." Rowan glanced at Eliza, who was smiling. "A record. That's serious business." "It is," Lila said solemnly. "Very serious." Spring came again. The 3rd spring since Eliza and Lila had arrived. The valley turned green, the cattle calved, and the work continued. Endless, exhausting, but no longer suffocating. Rowan walked the fence line one morning and realized he wasn't checking for problems. He was just walking, just looking. The land spread out around him, harsh and beautiful, and for the first time in years it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like home. That evening he found Eliza in the garden, planting tomatoes. He sat down beside her, his hands in the dirt. You ever think about leaving? He asked. Leaving where? Here. The ranch. Montana. She glanced at him. Why? You thinking about it? No, just wondering if you ever do. She was quiet for a moment, patting soil around a seedling. Sometimes, when it's 20 below and the tractor won't start and I haven't slept more than 4 hours in a week. But then I wake up and see the valley and remember why we're here. Why are we here? Because this is where we chose to be. Because we built something here. Because it's ours. Even though it's hard, especially because it's hard, easy things don't mean anything. Hard things, the things you fight for, those matter. Rowan thought about that. About the past 3 years, about everything they'd survived and built and learned, about the man he'd been when Eliza's first letter arrived, hollowed out, waiting for the end, about the man he was now, still flawed, still struggling, but whole in a way he hadn't been before. I'm glad you came, he said. Me too. They finished planting, washed up, went inside. Lila was at the kitchen table doing homework, her tongue stuck out in concentration. The house smelled like the roast Eliza had started that morning. Through the window, the sun was setting, painting the valley gold. Rowan poured himself coffee, sat down across from Lila. Need help with that? It's math. Do you know math? Some. Okay, what's 12 times 7? He worked it out in his head. 84. She checked her answer sheet, nodded approvingly. Good job. Thanks. She went back to her work and Rowan sat there, drinking his coffee, watching his daughter, because that's what she was now, legally and every other way that mattered, figure out multiplication. Eliza moved around the kitchen, efficient and sure. Outside, the cattle grazed, the chickens clucked, the ranch breathed. It wasn't perfect. Would never be perfect. There would be more hard winters, more broken equipment, more bills that came due at the worst possible time. There would be fights and failures and days when everything felt like too much. But they would handle it, together, because that was the thing Rowan had learned, the thing Eliza had taught him without ever saying it directly. You couldn't do this alone. The ranch, the life, the work, it would break you if you tried to carry it yourself. But with someone beside you, someone who showed up even when it was hard, someone who refused to quit, with that, you could survive anything, more than survive. You could build something, something real and solid and worth fighting for. That night, after dinner, after Lila went to bed, Rowan and Eliza sat on the porch. The stars were out, bright and infinite. The valley stretched dark around them. You know what I was thinking? Eliza said. What? We should get a dog. Rowan laughed. A dog? Lila's been asking for one, and it'd be good for the ranch, help with the cattle. We don't need help with the cattle. Everyone needs help with cattle. Plus, Lila would love it. You just want a dog. Maybe. Is that a problem? No, let's get a dog. She smiled, reached over, took his hand. They sat like that, not talking, just being. The night was cold but not bitter. Spring was coming, summer after that. Another year, another season, another cycle of work and worry and small victories. Rowan thought about the letter that had started all this, about the woman who'd written to a stranger and offered not romance, but partnership. About the choice she'd made to come here, to bet on him and this failing ranch, and the possibility that things could be different. She'd been right. Things could be different, not easy, not without cost, but different, better. He looked at the woman beside him, this person who'd saved him without trying to, who'd shown up and refused to leave, who'd built a life here through sheer stubborn will. He thought about the kid asleep upstairs, about his children scattered across the country but closer than they'd been in years, about the ranch that had almost killed him but had instead given him a reason to keep breathing. Thank you, he said quietly. Eliza glanced at him. For what? For writing that letter, for coming here, for not giving up when things got hard. You didn't give up either. I would have, if you hadn't come. Then it's good I came. Yeah, it is. They sat there until the cold drove them inside. The house was warm, the lights soft. Tomorrow there would be work, fences to check, cattle to feed, eggs to collect, 1,000 small tasks that never ended. But tonight, there was this. Peace. Family. Home. Rowan walked through the house, checking locks, turning off lights. In Lila's room, he paused in the doorway. She was sprawled across the bed, her rabbit clutched in one arm, her mouth slightly open. He pulled the blanket up over her shoulders, kissed her forehead. "Night, kiddo," he whispered. In their room, Eliza was already in bed, reading. She looked up when he came in. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm good." "You sure?" He climbed into bed beside her, turned off the lamp. In the darkness, he could hear the house settling, the wind outside. Eliza's breathing steady and sure. "Yeah," he said again. "I'm sure." And he was. The ranch would still be hard, life would still throw problems at them. But they would face it together, and that made all the difference. They'd learned how to survive, how to fight, how to build something worth keeping. They'd learned that love wasn't just a feeling, it was a choice, made every day. In the work you did, the promises you kept, the way you showed up even when it hurt. They'd learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future worth living in. They'd learned that sometimes the thing you think will destroy you is actually the thing that saves you, if you let it, if you're brave enough to try. And they had tried. Were still trying, would keep trying. Because that's what you did when you found something worth fighting for. You fought.